Hello to the folks I know. Hello to the folks that I don't know. Are we ready to kick this off? I have 2:15. We're kicking this off on time. Good afternoon. Thank you all so much for coming. We weren't sure how many people would be here. I'm very pleased to have a good group. My name is Ellen Cantor, and I'll be your moderator for today. This is full disclosure. This is my first trip to a conference anyway in at least 2 years. So bear with me, please. I'm excited. I didn't realize how much I missed this, but I'm also a little bit confused. So if you see me staring into my laptop camera or trying to steer into my laptop camera, bear with me. I've been working on that, by the way, trying to perfect that. So I don't think you're a great sized audience. I don't think I'll forget that we're live here, but just in case. And I want to actually give kudos to EDUCAUSE for letting us do this. We have a presenter who's here in person, electronically. I was going to say a robot. Please wave to Kerry Robertson.
Hi, Kerry.
Kerry is
Hi, everybody.
She was not able to come, unfortunately, and it looks like we succeeded in bringing her here fully in audio and video, which is awesome. That's great. Bear with us if we encounter any problems, knock on wood that we will not. Before I do anything else, I want to sincerely thank our three panelists. This kind of thing was easy for them, but it takes time. They are extremely busy people, but they, like many people in higher ed that I've encountered, they want to share their stories and experiences. They want others to learn from them, but I thank them for that. They're going to talk about their transformation of ERP, in all cases PeopleSoft, to AWS. Note the word transformation. We don't call these migrations. This is a change. All of these organizations and women leaders have gotten great value from this. We'll talk about that. I'm going to let them introduce themselves because they'll do a better job than I would. And then you'll get a chance to hear their stories from them personally, and their backgrounds, their institutions. So I thought that was important. I know you'll enjoy it. I have very much enjoyed getting to know these three amazing IT leaders who happen to be incredible women. They're dynamic, energetic, and outspoken. I think you're going to have fun. The goals for this session are simple. We're going to share as much insight on this topic as we can in 45 minutes. We're going to have some fun along the way. We'll go through a series of topics and questions and give them a chance to share what they've learned and to share specific guidance for you as you proceed in your journeys. We'll also get a little bit personal. We can't always try to do that. I think these kinds of sessions are a higher impact if we learn a little bit about the person as well as the project and the institution. I think it's what we tried to do is give stories and share impactful moments and give you the perspective of women in important IT leadership roles, running large impact change projects. A request, before I go any further, for some audience participation, something for you to think about. As we're going through these stories, please know that at the end of the session, as we transition to interactive Q&A, we're going to be asking the panelists and then you to give us the name of a song that makes you think of either your journeys or theirs, the ones that you've heard about today. So keep that in mind. We will be asking for that. We'd love to have you shout out after the panelists. Let them have their turn first, but then have you shout out your songs, what you thought of. A quick little, not a plug, but informational note. Kerry, let me know if I get this right. There is a community EDUCAUSE group. If this topic is of great interest to you, you should look them up and see if you can get value. It is the Cloud Computing Community Group, otherwise known as CCCG. Did I get that right, Kerry?
You did. Thank you, Ellen.
Awesome. Great. So some of the topics we will cover: people and culture, strategy and approach, getting executive support and sustaining it, outcomes, realized benefits, and organizational governance. Okay. So now, with no further ado, we're going to move to introductions. And Jess, can you start us off?
Good afternoon. I almost said good morning. I think I'm still in Arizona time. Good afternoon. So I'm Dr. Jess Evans, and I am the Chief Operating and Digital Transformation Officer at Arizona State University. A couple quick facts, if you don't know about ASU, we're kind of big. As a single institution, we are the largest in the U.S., so we have 135,000 degree-seeking students, mixed between online and on campus. We're around 75 to 78,000 on campus. We have 5 campuses in Arizona. We have a DC campus, an LA campus, and 33 in-country academic areas, physical institutions through Thunderbird Global School of Management. So we are not small. We're 4.3 billion operating, and I oversee about 200 million for IT. And we have a large team, and I'm in central IT, and distributed IT represents about 60% of our IT professionals, and central IT only represents 40% of our IT professionals. Super fun. Yeah. So that's a little bit about me. Ellen?
Thanks, Jess. Hello, everyone. I'm also happy to be here with you. I'm Ellen Cohen. I'm the Chief Information Officer at the College of the Holy Cross. I've been with Holy Cross for more than 30 years now. Holy Cross, very different than ASU. Every time Jess said large, switch that to small, and that would be Holy Cross. 3,000 students, all undergraduate, all liberal arts, highly residential. So I'll be giving some of the perspective from the small colleges to the questions today. One recent event at the college we're very excited about. We inaugurated our 33rd president on Friday, Vincent Rougeau. We're very excited. He's the first lay president at Holy Cross and the first president who is a person of color. So the campus is very excited about the years ahead under his presidency. And Kerry?
Thank you. Hi, everybody. I'm Kerry Robertson. I'm the Executive Director of Infrastructure Services at University of California Office for the President. The University of California Office for the President is the administering body over all of the UCs system-wide. So that includes 10 different campuses, 5 medical centers, and 3 national labs. In my role, I get to manage both local and system-wide infrastructure services. So this includes the payroll system for over 260,000 employees, as well as the applicant system for all of the students applying to go to the UCs, which is about 250,000 people annually. Throughout my career, I've had the opportunity to work at 4 different campuses. I worked at University of California, Santa Cruz, University of Arizona, and Harvard University, and I've been able to participate in cloud migrations at 3 of them. So I'm excited to be here today. Thank you for accommodating me. Back to you, Ellen.
All right, it's great to have you, Kerry. I'm glad this all worked out. And you're coming in loud and clear. So just a couple, there's more about the panelists than me, but just a little background on me. So I've been in higher ed for a long time, well over 20 years now. I'm now with Sierra-Cedar for the past year or so, helping clients improve systems, improve digital experience. And I'm very glad to continue to be in the higher ed landscape, which is something I'm passionate about. I was at the UMass System Office, doing shared systems for UMass for many years, over 20 years as an associate CIO, enterprise applications, business intelligence, and analytics. And had a consulting background before that. One of the things, there are many things that I enjoy and I'm proud of, but one of the things I'm most proud of is mentoring aspiring technical leaders throughout my career, particularly women aspiring to technical leadership roles. That's why this conference, this session appealed to me greatly. Something that I feel strongly is needed and gives me fulfillment and joy. Now, why did I come to Sierra-Cedar? A few reasons here. Their strong higher ed business line focus, their deep understanding of higher ed, particularly in this changing landscape. It's such an exciting sector to continue to be in for me. I'm also very pleased with their culture of integrity and inclusion. And they have a large, very diverse client list, big schools, small schools, public, privates, and that allows me to support both transformational and sustainable initiatives. Enough about me. I could go on for a while, but we have very limited time. We have to get to the panelists. So we're moving into our discussion topics, and we'll start with our first one, and I love this. We're starting with personal reflections. Get the tone. So let me start with our first question, which is, what advice do you give women, or anyone for that matter, aspiring to careers in technology leadership? And I'm going to ask Jess to start us off with this.
Thank you, Ellen. Like we didn't practice this, right? Like it's a big surprise. Okay. So, some advice for women, specifically. Stay the course. Don't give up. We might have had a tumultuous couple 18 months. We might have been through some trials and tribulations. We might have been challenged in many ways, whether you're male, female, or anything else. All of us have been challenged. For women in higher ed, the most important thing I can tell you that no matter what barrier comes up, no matter what challenge is presented, we can overcome it. And being able to figure out how to overcome it, or how to even take advantage of it, and do better, when you have that mindset, that's where success comes from. And so I would advocate that anyone who's having challenges, try to work collaboratively and figure it out, and stay the course. That would be my advice right now. Ellen?
Great, that's great advice, Jess. My advice is compatible with that. I would say it this way: be nice, but not too nice. Has anybody heard of? Recently, in the past year, was recommended Radical Candor by Kim Scott. I see some nodding heads. And so, her theory of management and leadership is to think about both on two scales. One is caring scale. So I don't know, are women tend to be high on the caring scale? I for one, very high on that. Like, I care about my staff deeply. But very importantly, there's another scale or another continuum, which is to challenge directly. Okay, so you need to still be clear with your expectations of your staff and hold people accountable. That's where I needed to learn, and I wish I had discovered this book many years ago. I think I would have achieved more in my career. Some of my remarks today, actually, about this transition to the cloud is couched in I don't know, was I too nice? Because we were a little slow to make this transition, and I think if I had discovered this sooner, it might have helped me. And so I'll touch on some other things. So the world needs caring and kind leaders and managers, just also not at the expense of being clear with your expectations of your staff and, you know, the sense of accountability. So that would be my advice. Be kind, but not too kind.
Thank you so much, both of you. Those were great. That's great advice. So our next question, is there an amusing or impactful moment in your career you'd like to share? And I know Kerry has one, so let's.
I do. Okay, so early in my career, not at my current organization, I was working on an enterprise application and deploying new modules to different business offices, right? So you do a module, one business office, you move to another one, everything was going great. I was approaching the next business office to work on their module. They were currently using paper and spreadsheets, and I was like, this is great. I'm going to be a hero. They're going to be so excited about this IT rollout that they're going to love me and be just thrilled. So for me, it was like an obvious improvement, but for them, it was a massive change to what they've been doing. So I was getting all this pushback and all this resistance, and they were this really great group of people. Like, they were wonderful and so positive, but as soon as we talk about this effort, the attitude would change a little bit. So finally, somebody said to me, I kid you not, they said to me, "We don't hate you, just everything you're trying to do." I thought, like, but for me, that was a big moment, because I thought, okay, like now we can start and have real talk about what we're trying to do. So it taught me that it wasn't me, it was the change that they were resisting. And that was a really important perspective for me to gain, because I thought it was all me. I thought I was the problem. So we came to common terms. You know, they agreed that the deployment needed to happen. I knew the resistance wasn't personal, and we got there. The migration happened, the module worked well, and afterwards, they sent me a fruit basket with a note signed by everybody. These were people who hated me, I thought. So this was a big moment for me in my career and really transformed the way I think. So I really learned that I don't have to be loved, I just have to be respected. So that's an important thing. You don't have to be best friends with people in order to be successful and to get people and to be a good leader. to where they need to go. So my advice would be speak up. Your voice is important. Your perspective is always needed. And it's okay to have a different viewpoint. Reminding folks that you do not have to be perfect, and it's okay to not have all the answers. And to me, and I think we've all proven this, diversity is so important. So really speak up. It makes us all stronger. That's my advice. Back to you, Ellen.
That's great. Thank you so much, Kerry. All right, our next topic is people and culture. So our first question, I think this one's for Ellen. Can you describe cultural barriers faced, how you address them? Would you change that approach if you were doing this again?
Sure, thanks. Good questions. We did face cultural barriers. One thing about this project, though, it was a re-platforming of our existing PeopleSoft system. So we were not. It wasn't like we were going to Workday or Oracle, a true SaaS implementation. So the business units weren't resisting because it wasn't much of a change for them. But I really did have strong resistance from the engineering staff and the IT technical staff. And you know, when I think back on it, the question of would I try again with this radical candor, or could I have been more persuasive? But it really wasn't until trying to maintain on-premise complex infrastructure and things started having outages, and we just could not match the uptime and resiliency you get with being in the cloud with a platform like Amazon Web Services. So one anecdote about it, we just went live a few weeks ago. It's wonderful, and it's funny how the engineers, a different view of the history, because they say, we were never against going to the cloud because they got to learn firsthand just how robust this platform is and feature-rich, and they've come to appreciate it. So they're all in and seem to think they always were all in.
But you know what? Sometimes it's best to let that perception continue.
I'm not going to win that one.
All right. Our next question is for Jess. Did your cloud migration strategy consider the impact on your existing IT staff? Were people concerned about their jobs going away? If so, are there lessons learned?
Thank you. Yes, in building upon Ellen's example here, I had many staff that came up to me and said, "You are trying to eliminate my job. All this wonderful automation, what am I going to do?" And I said, "Oh, let me tell you the opportunities I have for you today." The whole point of your cloud transformation is to empower each of those engineers who have that fear to make them relevant. That is what you're doing by transitioning to the cloud. The legacy practices of putting CDs in trays is obsolete. Yes, we still have COBOL programmers in the world. However, many engineers really want to be relevant. That's why they're an engineer. They want to be embracing the new technology, work on the cool things. So when I outlined to the team, hey, I'm building this platform with you. We are building this platform to give your career relevancy and long-term sustainable options for you into the future. And so by demonstrating to them and working with them on, instead of just programming, and doing Windows updates or doing patches and fixes, if you start to move away into some of these new technologies, I'm going to invest in you. I'm going to commit this investment so that you have a job here for the long haul. And so when you start to smooth out those feathers and start to inspire them, when they embraced it, within 6 months, I had 300 code robots written. I have code that writes code, so that my engineers don't have to write code as much, and they can give that intellectual capacity to come with more innovative solutions. And so those benefits, once they start to realize those benefits, and I have more than 300 now, but when they understood that code robots weren't there to replace them, they were to take the mundane from them and empower to use their brain power, they were all in. And so that's some of the lessons we learned. And it's all about how you empower your teams and have them see the vision. Once they see the vision, they do it themselves.
Great. Fantastic. Thank you so much. Our next topic, what is or was the strategy and approach for your cloud journey? First question, when considering cloud migration strategies, did you evaluate a rehosting, otherwise known as lift and shift, versus re-platform? And I think Jess might have one or two things to say about this, so I'm going to ask.
Ellen's framing it that way because this is where I get super passionate. and my co-panelists here will know, every time we practice, I was like, this one's my question, I got it. So I cannot emphasize enough that a rehost is cloud death. Okay, so we'll just lay that out there right now. A re-platform or cloud native is where you're going to benefit on the scale, the sustainability, the resiliency, and the intellectual capacity, reducing technical debt. Not just physical infrastructure technical debt, human technical debt, because you're upskilling your engineers. And so when you do a re-platform and you use cloud native, the benefits are exponential. So think of it this way, and Kerry had told me, you might want to explain the difference. So I didn't forget, Kerry. If I have a data center on premise, and I'm going to take a server, and I'm just going to put it in a data center in the cloud, choose the location, choose your cloud provider. We are AWS first. Not only, don't get upset, but first. So when we put our stuff in AWS, why do I want it the exact same way I have it here? It's not replicated, it's not resilient, I'm still paying for it all the time. What if I could not pay for it all the time? And what if I could use it and pay by the drink only when I want to use it? Radical, cool. Well, that's what we did. And so the cost savings is super important. You can utilize the cloud native tools. That's the power of the cloud. It's not about just, I worked at a previous, not my current institution, but previous institution where I had a data center on this side of the street, and I had a data center across the street, and that was our DR strategy. Right. So, not very resilient, but literally, I think it was like 500 feet apart. So, by going to the cloud and having the replication across data centers globally, by protecting and having the security that's enabled, taking care of all those mitigations of the privacy concerns and everything, it's almost a no-brainer. And then you're also scalable and sustainable into the future. So just rehosting and lifting and shifting, cloud death. You should definitely go cloud native. Okay, and no, AWS did not pay me to say that.
Absolutely. I think that's candor that people need to hear. Second question.
That's radical candor.
Radical candor. There we go. Next question. What were the most significant deciding factors in your decision to migrate your PeopleSoft workloads to the public cloud? This is the why now question. What is it that triggered you to move? Let's see. Who do we want to go first here? Hang on.
I think I'm going to go first.
I think Kerry.
Yeah.
Kerry? Okay.
Yeah. So I had two different experiences, and both times I had to have a very firm impetus, a very firm deadline in order to be successful. So in one scenario, we had a data center on campus that needed to be repurposed. It was time for that hardware refresh, and we were not going to do it. So we decided that we were going to move out all of our enterprise applications out of the data center to AWS, and we had about 2 years to complete that project. So that's the banner, the PeopleSoft, the IAM, the data warehouse, and some PHP apps. This project was successful because it was a high priority project. All the obstacles that we hit were removed, and we had a firm deadline. There was no getting around the deadline. We had to hit that date. So that was successful. The next time, we had a managed service provider who was requiring us to move to their new platform, their new data center, which meant we had to test with all of the UC locations and coordinate that effort in a very short time period. We had 6 months to move to an entirely new platform. We were not particularly thrilled with the current service provider and the stability of that provider. And so the easy path would have been just to move forward with the same provider on their new platform. We still would have had to test with all the locations, but at least it would have been known. But instead, we decided to really leverage that opportunity to move to a more modern platform, allowing us to really think forward instead of getting stuck. Our theory was basically, if not now, never. If we weren't going to take advantage of this opportunity to really move forward and move into AWS than we never were. We were going to be committed to that vendor and that platform forever. So we found a partner who had a proven track record of both PeopleSoft and AWS expertise. We knew we couldn't do it ourselves in 6 months. That's crazy for an enterprise application on your own, unless you have experts in the room. And we have a great team learning and growing in the cloud, but they are in no way PeopleSoft and AWS experts yet. We're getting there. So we found a partner and we were able to re-platform the entire payroll system for all 260,000 people who, by the way, like to be paid on time. So those people, we really had to be successful, and we were. We did it on time, under budget, and in less than 6 months. So it can happen, but you need to be realistic and you've got to have a firm deadline. Otherwise, you'll never stop tweaking and you'll never finish.
That's great. Ellen, additional thoughts?
No, I'm inspired by my panelists, and,
Yeah.
and we're already seeing the benefits even in this early time. The why now was, as I mentioned, I think actually I'll tie it to the pandemic. Maybe I think a lot of institutions, maybe the smaller ones too, when you had to pivot everything to online, and then seeing everything had to be up 7 by 24 by 365, it brought a lot of this. Why now? We really needed it. Always up.
Great, thank you. Next topic is executive support, which we all know is important. The first question is, what were the key elements you included in your financial analysis and justification as part of the approval process at your institution? Ellen, do you want to take this?
Sure. For executive support, I think I made it somewhat easy on my boss, who's the CFO, in that I had anticipated this shift from capital to operating, and if we were going to go to a true SaaS, you knew you'd be shifting some of your IT staff resources. So I had earmarked a couple of pending retirements, one that happened, another one that's next week actually, people in this support area. So that plus one other turnover position that turned over actually allowed me to shift the operating funds that would be needed for this move of our ERP system into the cloud. So I would advise people to do that, start marking positions, and because in some ways this positioned us for the future. At least the IT staffing part of it has been shifted now, so that if we go to a Workday or an Oracle, we'll have already made that transition within the entities.
Great, thank you, Ellen. Next question, also on executive support. What steps did you take or are you taking to lock in that executive support? How did you frame the reason and the driving triggers, impetus for this move? Kerry, do you want to take that one?
Sure. Yeah. So I think, we all know we need to have our elevator pitch lined up, right? We need to be able to have that elevator pitch. So we run into anybody, we all have the same talking points, and those are pretty known for the cloud. Elasticity, being able to tune your needs based on business cycles, disaster recovery and business continuity. I live in California, so I've got to worry about earthquakes and fires. And so I really needed to make sure I had a solution that could handle those challenges. Accommodation, going out to be able to spin up new environments, new non-prod environments, kind of on the fly, like a couple hours. You want a new environment for PeopleSoft? Sure, no problem. That's a new world. I didn't have that in my existing data center. Modernization, so more efficiency, better services are available as you keep up with the current trends in technology. And then environmental impact was big for us in California, making sure that we have, we're using purposeful built data centers, right? They're built really efficient, really green, and that's an important attribute for us in the UCs. So what I had to do though, once I got through those, basic cloud benefits, the elevator pitch, is I really had to tailor my message to the audience that I was talking to. So as Jess mentioned, for engineers, I talked about innovation, automation, modern services, and that got them pretty excited, right? They were looking to the future. They were excited to play and be part of the new technology. For the business folks, I had to talk about the ability to scale for peak activity, right? So like open enrollment for benefits, student enrollment, being able to scale for those things is huge, right? I don't have to scale for my maximum capacity year round. I can kind of turn up and down the dial, if you were. For the business, I could also talk about how we had more reliable and more stable services. And again, we could get new environments and upgrades much more easily than we could in a traditional data center. But then for executive leadership, I really had to think differently. I had to think about the financial implications, because that's what drives most executive leadership decisions, is they need to be thinking about the numbers. So I was able to point that we would no longer need capital purchases. We would no longer need funding for capital purchases. So I wasn't going to come every few years and say I need like several $1 million for my data center. That was a relief for executive leadership. I was also able to self-fund or fund through future savings both of the migration. So that was also huge for them. I wasn't coming asking for millions of dollars to do this project. I was able to find the money offset by my future savings. So that was a big one. And then also I was able to point to the ability to have data-driven decisions. If I wanted to find out how much one non-prod environment costs per day, I could tell them that. And that was something we never had before. It was more of a fixed cost. So it was really thinking about the audience and tailoring my message in order to get the best executive support.
Great. Thank you so much, Kerry. Very helpful. All right, now perhaps this is the most important topic. How would you describe your outcomes, your accomplishments, realized benefits, or challenges? And I'd like to go back to Jess to start us off with this.
So a couple of things I'd really like to share with you that are also super important. One of our challenges was trying to understand the cost model of going to the cloud. It's different than what we've experienced. So when you have your server in your data center, you're like, okay, I buy a server and I pay for it forever and I pay for all of this. With all of the complexities of the cloud service offerings, when going cloud native, you really have to figure out, how can I optimize my spend? So as Kerry was just alluding to, she's like, we need to get cost savings. You really can have cost savings, but your engineers are not necessarily positioned in a place to be watching the numbers. You want them writing code. You don't want them necessarily going, how much does this cost when I stand up this EC2 instance or when I start to use these things, right? So one of our accomplishments and outcomes that we learned, hire a cloud accountant. Pause for dramatic effect. Okay. This is super important. I cannot tell you how much money we saved as a result. When you have an accountant, and I physically had him sitting shoulder to shoulder with the engineers, and I had the AWS module up, and an engineer would spin up an EC2 instance, and he had the dollars spinning right by him, and he goes, see, this is how much you're costing us. And there was this wonderful partnership that came to fruition where the engineers got educated by the accountant, and the accountant got educated by the engineers. So when the accountant would say, that's costing money, like a good accountant should, our engineers go, yes, and it needs to, because here are the technology solutions we are deploying, this is why we're doing it, it's important, right? And they were able to build the human connection by solving an innovation problem and making it more cost-effective for us in the long run. And so they established a relationship, we had a human element, and we managed our costs. A cloud accountant is the secret sauce.
That's just one example. I think someone has another.
Yes, I think Kerry, do you want to add to that?
I'd love to. So I mentioned earlier about the ability to have a non-prod environment down, the cost specific by a day, sometimes even by the minute. That's my favorite thing, is when I can go and actually see minute by minute the costs. But we were actually able to leverage that into some real savings. So we found an environment that we didn't need all the time, and we turned it off. And that environment was a performance environment, so it was sized the same as production. It was costing us $30,000 a month, and we turned it off. We threw it away. We said, we'll spin it up again when we need it. That's huge, right? And then another benefit for us related to the AWS side is, because disaster recovery is really different in the cloud, by using high availability, we were able to let go of some of our licensing, some of our Oracle licensing, because we didn't have a traditional disaster recovery that had to be standing by all the time. So those were some big wins for us on the AWS side. With our managed service provider, we found a partner that was reliable and responsive. So that was a great refresher for us. We also had internal resources who were able to work on projects and applications that required their subject matter expertise rather than on more general efforts related to this migration. So that was wonderful. And then we got some really well-needed visibility into the infrastructure and the security through our managed service provider and coupled with AWS. So that was a big win for us on some of the AWS and those managed service provider outcomes.
Great. Thank you, Kerry. Ellen just went live, so we're going to give her a pass on this one. Until the next time. Ready, speaking of that, ready or not. So there's all sorts of discussion around, are we ready for this? Or how do you assess an organization's readiness? How did your organizational readiness for change impact your decisions on scope? And I think everyone wanted to respond to this, but Kerry, let's go with you first.
Okay, so here's the trick. You're never going to be ready. You just have to start. You will never be fully ready. I know some organizations who laid out their architecture. They took a year to lay out their architecture to figure out exactly how they're going to migrate to the cloud. And then by the time they started, things had changed. There were new services getting offered and they had to adjust their architecture all over again. So you're never going to be ready. You just have to start. And the traditional waterfall project management, again, kind of where you lay everything out exactly how you're going to do it and the modules and, you know, all of that, that's not going to work here. You're going to have to pivot frequently. So what you need is, that's why I stick to that. You really got to have a firm deadline. So you're forced to make those tough decisions in order to be successful, but you'll never be ready. You won't.
That's powerful. Thank you for that, Kerry. Ellen?
Yeah, I would agree. We weren't ready, ready or not. Looking back on it and learning from my panelists, my co-panelists here, I think we could have done a little more readiness preparation. And you mentioned, Ellen, the EDUCAUSE Cloud Computing Community Group and resources like that, or even talking to our peers, are valuable, and we should all take advantage of that.
So I believe when we practiced, I said, plus 1,000, you're never ready. And you just have to get over that. So back to my first advice, to my first response to comment, stay the course, don't give up. There are very tangible benefits. You just have to do it. I'm trying not to quote Nike, just do it. You do have to just do it. And when you get into it, it's this whole new landscape of opportunity in a positive way.
Thank you, Jess. All right, we're almost to the end here. What is your closing advice? Do you have any final closing comments before we move on to Q&A here for institutions, and this is all institutions, in some part of their plan or their move to the cloud? And I think everyone wanted to jump in here. Kerry?
Yeah, so I've kind of said this a few times, but you must have a firm reason for moving with a hard end date. Otherwise, you'll never stop tweaking. You'll never finish because you can always make it better. So you've just got to be able to get enough, to get through this enough. Additionally, the project really has to be a top priority for IT. It can't just be done on the side. It's going to impact all groups within IT. It really transforms IT and needs its full attention. So it's got to be an intentional, high priority project with a firm deadline. That would be my advice.
Great, thank you, Kerry.
Yeah, my biggest revelation, we had this project and a couple of other cloud moves, large systems moving, and I was surprised by how much using a third-party partner helped. They've been through this before. They've done it repeatedly. And so, you know, providing the project manager, I think project managers, in-house project managers, are there any here? It is the toughest job there is, trying to get your peers to do things they don't want to do, and you don't have the authority to make them do it. But then if you partner, that project manager, they've been through it before, and they have their methodology, and you have to trust it, and you do, and you get through it, and you don't fight as much. There was no fighting over things because they said, trust us, we've been through this, we know what's going to happen, and it really does go much more smoothly.
Jess, what would your closing advice be to the group?
being an agile organization. Kerry hit on that multiple times. I want to reiterate and stand on that platform with her. So building sprints instead of a waterfall approach, creating a backlog so you understand what you're doing, creating a DevOps team, absolutely imperative. This will help you be successful faster. The other thing, cloud accountant. Okay, super important. And then I want to highlight again, Alan said here, I'm someone who's done it before. Whether it's a vendor partner, Sierra-Cedar for us was a fantastic partner. I wouldn't sit up here if I didn't think so. They helped us move terabytes upon terabytes of data from Georgia to Seattle. It was amazing. So we had a fantastic, reliable, trusted relationship. Find a partner that's reliable and trusted, and lean on your peers. EDUCAUSE, reach out, be informed, but as Kerry said, don't wait. So finding that right sweet balance, you lead to success.
Thank you. Okay, as promised, we are going to move to interactive Q&A, but before we go, we have our song selections. So can I ask our panelists to name a song? Oh, Ellen wants to go. Name a song that your journey makes you think of.
Just happens to be my favorite song, At Last, Etta James.
Etta James. Oh, yeah, I wish we could play it. That's awesome. Thank you. Jess?
Oh, okay.
Don't stop believing.
Gary?
Mine would be the Mission Impossible theme song because it's a little dicey at the beginning, but it always works out.
Oh, that's great. I'm just glad no one picked the Stones. You can't always get what you want, although maybe someone from the audience. So audience shout outs. Anyone have a song for your own journey or something that you came up with from today? Yes, in the back.
Keep on moving.
Keep on moving.
Keep on
Yes,
moving.
love it. Yes, in the back on this side.
Terry said, I want to be.
I want to be sedated.
Oh, that's fun. Any others?
I know.
That's great. And you can shout out if something comes to you, like, oh, here's one.
Oh, there
nice.
it goes.
Nice,
There it
flirting
goes.
with disaster.
Flirting with disaster, yes. Okay,
Just
other
work.
questions. So let me show you our esteemed panel here. Other questions, things that came up. Yes. Yes. Okay, the criteria used to select implementation partners. Who would like to take that one?
Well, we just did it, but we had a long-standing relationship with this partner, with Sierra-Cedar, and so they helped us with all our on-prem work as well. I did have a couple other companies I used point projects along the way, but they didn't have the capabilities I was looking for, so it was a quick eval.
Carrie, any thoughts? Yes. Go ahead,
Yeah, I
Carrie.
do. So for us, we knew we needed to go to AWS. That was our cloud provider that we are using. So we reached out to them to try to get recommendations of service providers who had experience with AWS and PeopleSoft. That was our primary focus. In addition to that, we had a giant decision matrix that we had to, I'd be happy to share with you if you contact me, when we were looking at several different providers and different models. So we did some deep analysis because we had to do some internal discussions to decide what direction was best for us.
And so we're similar to Holy Cross. Sierra-Cedar has been our partner for well over 10 years. We're maybe approaching 15. I don't know. It's been a while. It predates me. And actually, I even had a partnership with Sierra-Cedar at my previous institution. And we felt that since they were already our managed services provider, we didn't actually go beyond that because it was just a project in our portfolio. So it was not something we needed to go out to bid for or do an RFP like we normally have to do as a public institution. We just had it a part of our contract. So but I can share with you that our normal process would be to do RFP vetting. And if you do not have a stand-in service provider, then that would probably be one of the ways to go. Because now there's multiple vendors. But at the time when we had done it, to Kerry's point, AWS has a really fantastic list, and Sierra-Cedar has a fantastic relationship with them. So.
Other questions?
Back.
Oh, back in the corner. Oh, how long did it take senior leadership to be convinced this was the right path?
Oh, can I take this one?
Absolutely, Kerry.
Can I not?
Okay, so I love my senior leadership, and all I can say is that they were on board with this direction, but it wasn't until 30 days before go live that they were willing to send the email saying we were leaving. So they were supportive but concerned. So we did it, and we built their confidence, and they gave notice. But they were always in the background. We had a game plan for this, in case we failed. We had to have that to make them comfortable. So I don't know if they were ever on board until we ran our first payroll successfully. Then I think we were able to admit it was a success.
It's all about success. That's a great story, Kerry.
And I think I want to hit on the points that Kerry had said earlier. Nobody's ever ready. And so senior leadership, they are educated, they see all the marketing materials, they know where things are headed. But their hesitancy, to Kerry's point, is it really going to work? And so they couch their support based on, as senior leaders often do, oh, that was successful, good job, see, I supported you all the time, fantastic. Or, oh, you didn't run payroll, see, I told you I was worried. So you're never going to win, and so you just have to, through thoughtful planning and sticking to a date, you just have to do it. So, there was another question? Yeah, question.
At where beginning, you mentioned community.
Oh, the EDUCAUSE group?
Cloud community.
Oh, I have it right here.
You mentioned-
Cloud Computing Community Group, otherwise known as CCCG. It could be a great resource for you, so do check into
There's
that.
people nodding their heads. So
Yes, other people are using it.
Yes, no, here, and then it's an advisor.
Yes.
I have a question specifically about what Ellen said about how people been able to use salary dollars OpEx for this. I know you described Holy Cross as a small college. Can you tell us a little bit more about what those positions were that you were confident able to give up that staff?
Yes. Yes. And I have my eye on it. So one who he's retiring next week is, his title is senior software developer, but he does a lot of the patching and the regs for the different pillars of PeopleSoft, and now this is being done by Sierra-Cedar for us. So a lot of his work's coming off his plate. The manager of the software developer group retired. And I had somebody in there temporarily who was also retiring, and so now I promoted one of the software developers, so he's now a working manager, so he does the management and he still has his hands on things. And then another software developer doesn't have to do the patches of the regs and all that, so he does more consulting with people. Yeah, I wonder about the pandemic. I hate to be negative, but there's likely to be a good amount of churn or turnover and so these decisions might be, sadly, opportunities to shift. Yeah, so the enterprise support team was 6 people, and it's now 4 people. Yes, it went from 6 to 4. That was good.
Any other questions?
Great.
Well, let me just close by once again thanking the panelists who did a great job as far as I'm concerned. And I'm hoping that you walk away with some additional insight, perspective. Don't forget about
The cloud accountant.
please.